White Paper of China's Position on China-US Economic and Trade Relations. China is the largest developing country in the world and also the country with the highest annual contribution rate to world economic growth. The United States is the largest developed country in the world and has the largest economy in the world. The economic and trade relations between China and the United States are of great significance to both countries and have a significant impact on global economic stability and development. Since the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and the United States 46 years ago, bilateral economic and trade relations have continued to develop. The trade volume between China and the United States has surged from less than $2.5 billion in 1979 to nearly $688.3 billion in 2024. The scope and level of economic and trade cooperation between China and the United States continue to expand, making important contributions to the economic and social development of both countries and the improvement of people's well-being. However, in recent years, the rise of unilateralism and protectionism in the United States has seriously disrupted normal economic and trade cooperation between China and the United States. Since the economic and trade friction between China and the United States in 2018, the U.S. has imposed high tariffs on over $500 billion worth of Chinese products exported to the U.S., and has continued to implement policies to contain and suppress China. China has to take strong measures to resolutely defend its national interests. At the same time, China has always adhered to the basic position of resolving disputes through dialogue and consultation, and has conducted multiple rounds of economic and trade consultations with the United States, striving to stabilize bilateral economic and trade relations. On January 15, 2020, China and the United States signed the Economic and Trade Agreement between the Government of the People's Republic of China and the Government of the United States of America, the first phase of the China-US Economic and Trade Agreement. After the agreement came into effect, China adhered to the spirit of the contract, worked hard to overcome the sudden impact of the epidemic and the multiple adverse factors such as supply chain disruptions and global economic recession, and promoted the implementation of the agreement. The U.S. has issued multiple statements affirming the effectiveness of China's implementation of the agreement. On the other hand, the United States has continuously tightened export controls and imposed additional sanctions on Chinese companies, repeatedly violating its contractual obligations. The United States has recently released America First Trade and Investment Policy Memoranda and executive summaries of America First Trade Policy Reports, imposing additional tariffs on Chinese products across the board, including tariffs on fentanyl and other issues, imposing equivalent tariffs, and further increasing tariffs by 50%, and proposing 301 investigation and restriction measures such as port charges for China's maritime, logistics, and shipbuilding industries. These restrictive measures, which threaten with tariffs and other measures, are wrong on top of wrong, once again exposing the typical unilateralism and bullying nature of the United States. They not only violate the laws of the market economy, but also go against multilateralism, and will have a serious impact on the economic and trade relations between China and the United States. China has taken necessary countermeasures in accordance with the basic principles of international law and laws and regulations. The tariff and other economic and trade restrictions imposed by the United States on trade partners have artificially cut off the original mature global supply chain industrial chain, broken the market-oriented free trade rules, seriously disrupted the economic development of countries, harmed the well-being of people in countries including the United States, and hurt economic globalization. The Chinese side has always believed that the essence of China-US economic and trade relations is mutual benefit and win-win outcomes. As two major countries with different development stages and economic systems, it is normal for China and the United States to have differences and frictions in economic and trade cooperation. The key is to respect each other's core interests and major concerns, and find appropriate solutions to problems through dialogue and consultation. To clarify the facts of China-US economic and trade relations and clarify China's policy stance on relevant issues, the Chinese government has released this white paper. 1. The essence of China-US economic and trade relations is mutual benefit and win-win outcomes. Since the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and the United States, bilateral trade and investment cooperation has achieved fruitful results, realizing complementary advantages and mutual benefit. China and the United States have broad common interests and broad space for cooperation. Maintaining the stable development of China-US economic and trade relations is in the fundamental interests of the two countries and their people, and is also conducive to global economic development. It has been proven that cooperation between China and the United States benefits both parties, while confrontation harms both. Economic and trade cooperation between China and the United States is an inevitable choice for mutual benefit and win-win outcomes. 1. China and the United States are important partners in the trade of goods. Bilateral trade in goods is growing rapidly. According to United Nations statistics, the bilateral trade volume of goods between China and the United States reached $688.28 billion in 2024, which is 275 times that of the establishment of diplomatic relations in 1979 and more than 8 times that of China's accession to the World Trade Organization in 2001. At present, the United States is China's largest destination for goods exports and the second largest source of imports. In 2024, China's exports to the United States and imports from the United States accounted for 14.7% and 6.3% of China's total exports and imports, respectively. China is the third largest export destination and second largest import source for the United States. In 2024, U.S. exports to China and imports from China accounted for 7% and 13.8% of the total U.S. exports and imports, respectively. 5. Both China and the United States benefit from bilateral economic and trade cooperation. In international trade relations, countries realize their own value, meet each other's needs, and achieve common development through commodity exchange based on comparative advantages. As the two largest economies in the world, the economic and trade cooperation between China and the United States has brought enormous economic benefits to both sides. Enterprises and consumers from both countries have gained tangible benefits through two-way trade and investment. The economic and trade cooperation between China and the United States has created a large number of job opportunities for the United States. According to the report released by the U.S.-China Business Council in April 2024, China is the main market for U.S. goods and services exports. In terms of total exports of goods and services in 2022, China is the largest export market for 3 states in the United States, the top 3 export markets for 32 states, and the top 5 export markets for 43 states. According to the National Committee on U.S.-China Trade, in 2022, U.S. exports to China created 931,000 U.S. jobs, ranking third only to Canada and Mexico, and surpassing the total number of U.S. jobs supported by the Asian markets of Japan and South Korea. The economic and trade cooperation between China and the United States has created numerous business opportunities and profits for American companies. Table 3. China has a huge market and constantly upgrading consumer demand. For example, Tesla's sales in China continue to grow, with sales exceeding 657,000 units in 2024, a year-on-year increase of 8.8%, reaching a historical high. More than 10 American insurance companies have branches in China. Goldman Sachs, American Express, Bank of America, MetLife, and other American financial institutions have all achieved significant investment returns as strategic investors in Chinese financial institutions. According to statistics from the U.S. Department of Commerce in August 2024, there were 1,961 U.S. companies in China, with majority ownership and assets, sales, or net income of over $25 million in 2022, with a total sales revenue of $490.52 billion, a year-on-year increase of 4.3%. The economic and trade cooperation between China and the United States has promoted the upgrading of American industries. In economic and trade cooperation with China, American multinational corporations have enhanced their international competitiveness by integrating the advantages of the two countries' factors. Apple designs and develops mobile phones in the United States, assembles and produces them in China, and sells them in the global market. Tesla establishes a wholly owned superfactory in China to expand production capacity and export to global markets. China has taken over some of the production processes of American companies, allowing the United States to invest capital and other resources in innovation and management, concentrate on developing high-end manufacturing and modern service industries, drive the upgrading of industries to high value-added and high-tech fields, and reduce the pressure on domestic energy resource consumption and environmental protection in the United States. The economic and trade cooperation between China and the United States has brought tangible benefits to American consumers. The United States imports a large amount of consumer goods, intermediate goods, and capital goods from China, supporting the development of the manufacturing supply chain and industrial chain in the United States, enriching consumer choices, reducing living costs, and increasing the actual purchasing power of the American people, especially the middle and low-income groups. The economic and trade cooperation between China and the United States has also created numerous business opportunities and profits for Chinese enterprises. The United States is the world's largest consumer market and most mature capital market. Chinese companies can invest in the United States, expand sales channels, enhance brand international influence, attract global customers and partners, and obtain financing more conveniently to support the rapid development of enterprises. American companies in China have provided experience in technological innovation, market management, and institutional innovation for Chinese enterprises, promoting their accelerated transformation and upgrading, and improving industry efficiency and product quality.